I mean, as I mentioned, I've been there for 15 years and I've had a lot of success. But up to now, I still experience a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, and sometimes just a bit of anxiety.
Welcome to Braving It, a brand new show that I am extremely excited about purely because it's close to my heart. This is a platform where I get to speak to people who are killing it in their areas of responsibility. We're talking about corporate people, business leaders, people who have said yes to a brave conversation. Why brave? Because we are talking about emotions that speak to us, that we experience on a daily, but are too afraid to voice. And maybe too afraid to voice because we often associate emotions with vulnerability. But the likes of Brene Brown have gone as far as redefining the concept of vulnerability. And in it, she talks about vulnerability being a sense of courage. Courage, what is courage? It's uncertainty, it's risk, it's emotional exposure. And so we are having courageous conversations with people who I know have a lot to share. We're doing this in the hopes of inspiring you and getting you to unearth your own enormity. So I'm sitting here with Mapula Bodibe. She is currently the CMO at MTN South Africa. Mapula, thank you for opening up your beautiful home for us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How are you feeling?
No, I'm feeling good.
You feeling good?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, relaxed and excited to have a chat to you about this.
Excellent. Okay. Excited that you are excited. So let me do a quick rundown, perhaps an introduction of sorts for those of you for those who don't know you very well. So Mapula, academically you completed your BCom in economics at UNISA. You then went on to do a postgraduate diploma in marketing at UNISA as well. And then you completed your MBA over 11 years ago. And then professionally, you started your career at Unilever as a marketing rep in the 90s. And then moved on to become an assistant brand manager for Yum Restaurants International, is it? And then, of course, you moved to MTN, the big yellow global brand. And that is where you started as a segment manager and then was promoted to senior marketing manager and GM for consumer marketing. Then you were the CMO at MTN Uganda. Then you were the consumer business unit executive at MTN and are now the chief marketing officer at MTN. What a growth. You have grown in one organization. How did you remain that disciplined to stay in one organization and be patient with the growth during that time?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting listening to you because I don't often, hear it reflected like that. Yeah, I've been at MTN 15 years and what you've described is really my journey there. To think that it's 15 years is quite a surprise even to me because it's gone so fast. Mainly because I was exposed to so many opportunities there. I never felt like I was ever stagnant. Whenever I had grown into a role, I was given another opportunity. So, but I was very, very fortunate. I had the benefit of having sponsors, people who just looked out for me, people who spoke for me when I was not in the room, and people who really pushed me into different directions. I definitely would not say I did it on my own. It was more just with the backing of a really good set of supporters around me.
So I met you at MTN probably about 10 years ago. And Mapula, I never really reported into you, but we worked in the same department, so to say. And you struck me as someone who was very focused. Very focused. You stayed in your lane. You didn't care who was doing what next to you. You were focused in your lane. And I will never forget, there was one particular meeting. I walked into that meeting and you were so firm. As a young black woman, you were firm about what it is that you wanted people to deliver on. And I remember thinking, whew, yeah, one needs to come prepared here, You can't just roll through. You need to know your story. You must have your story right. You must come correct. And yet, outside of the boardroom, you were vulnerable. You cared about people's personal development. I remember when I resigned from MTN, you called me aside and you asked me why. You called me to your desk and you asked me why am I leaving, and I told you my reasons. And then you said to me that you imagine that one day I will feature in Destiny magazine. I don't know if you remember that conversation. And lo and behold, I think it was a few months later, 9 to 10 months later, I literally had a full page spread in Destiny magazine. Mapula, you shoulder a lot of responsibility in your day-to-day. You're making big decisions on behalf of MTN customers. There's a lot of big monies that you're managing as well. How do you maintain your sanity in all of that? Meaning, do you ever encounter fear, anxiety? Do you doubt yourself in some of the big decisions that you have to make on a daily basis?
Sure, certainly. You know, I mean, as I mentioned, I've been there for 15 years and I've had a lot of success. But up to now, I still experience a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, and sometimes just a bit of anxiety, because I work in an industry where we're always doing something new. We're always trying different things. And as you rightly said, I'm responsible for quite a big portfolio. So there's a lot that rests on my shoulders. In fact, my business unit is responsible for more than, in fact, 70% of the MTN South Africa revenue. Sometimes when I think of that, I like really shoulder a lot of, you know, like anxiety, because I think, wow, this is quite a lot. But at the same time, I think about, you know, the people who've given me this opportunity. And the fact that they believe in me and have the confidence. And that sometimes, you know, really propels me to think, you know what, I can definitely do this, and I know that I'm capable. I'm also responsible for quite a big team. People are always looking up to me. People are wanting, you know, direction. Decisions in my life are like literally every day, and not small decisions, big decisions. And, you know, and that sometimes, you know, gets me to be a bit uncertain. But I always try and center myself and say, you know, let me separate the facts from my feelings. And I think about, you know, like, what is it that I'm able to influence? And then I go for it. So it's definitely daunting, but, you know, it's part of, you know.
It's part of what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, it's not easy, but it actually also what keeps me challenged in my role. Yeah.
You know what? At your level, and perhaps in your rise up the corporate ladder, was there ever a time or times when you felt underappreciated, overlooked perhaps for certain roles and responsibilities?
I think, yeah, to be honest, I would say there's very few examples I can think about, and purely because I absolutely have had tremendous support in my career. In my exposure at the MTN and even previously, I've just had the privilege of being supported. But I can think about a time where I worked with somebody who had been not necessarily somebody I'd known for a long time. And I think, as you've rightly said, sometimes I'm very firm in terms of how I take my position. And the person I was working with, especially being female, I don't think they were very appreciative of that. And, you know, because for me, it doesn't matter whether, you know, you're a line manager. I'm not really title or, you know, hierarchical. And I'm able to, even today, I'm able to challenge anyone, be it a board member, CEO, because of what I believe in. And the person that I was engaging or reporting to at the time didn't really take kindly to that. And, you know, went out of their way to basically just overlook me for certain things that I needed to be involved in, just to be able to influence a decision without my involvement. So I'd find out after something has been decided to say, oh, this has been decided. I was like, oh, okay, purely because they knew that I might have a different view. But fortunately, it wasn't prolonged. It's something that happened for a very short time. And, you know, I looked at it as not a reflection on me, but of somebody who actually wanted me to be, let's call it a follower, rather than, you know, standing firm in my views.
Do you think it had anything to do with the fact that you were female?
I definitely think so. I definitely think so, because in my career in general, I'm always surrounded by males. And for a long time, I've been like the the only female in a room, or in most of my meetings, I'm often the only female. And, sometimes it like strikes me, but sometimes I actually don't even pick it up. And somebody has to tell me to say, hey, did you notice that you were the only woman in that room? And sometimes I'll be the only woman, but I'll be basically driving the discussion.
Yes.
So I definitely think that for certain people, that doesn't necessarily sit well, depending on the exposure to females.
I suppose also being black and being a female, it also positions being black, female, and being as successful as you are, it really makes you an attractive, call it candidate for headhunters. And so my question is around now headhunters. I'm sure you get approached on a regular. Someone with your success, you get wooed into different companies regularly. How do you remain focused on the job that you have and not get swayed by every single opportunity that comes to you and it gets presented to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question because having been with the company that I'm with for so long, you are sometimes looking for change, and for me, it happens a lot. But right now, how I try and keep myself focused is by focusing on basically the roles that really, stand out. And only if something really, really sounds meaningful. Yes. Because, when you get to my level, you're not just looking for financial gain, you're looking for something a bit more impactful. And in fact, right now I'm at a stage in my career where I'm purposefully looking for, roles that can actually make a bigger impact in terms of society as well as who I am as a person. So I am no longer basically interested in just any role. It's about actually what type of role it is. So, but at the same time, because of my current work and how impactful it is, I'm able to focus on it. But to be honest, it's not as if I'm not open to other things. It just means it has to be something meaningful to me.
You mentioned something about in terms of who you are, something that has to do with who you are. Who are you, if I could, besides being a mother, the CMO of MTN, a friend to someone, a daughter, who are you at the core?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe to help answer that, I'll give a bit of my background. I come from very humble beginnings. I was raised by my grandparents. My mom had me when she was very young and, needed the guidance of her parents to raise me. So a lot of my, life and who I am has been impacted by my grandparents, who were very firm, very focused on education, very focused on achievement, very principled and very strict. And a lot of my value systems comes from that. But one thing they instilled in me was excellence. I needed to be excellent in everything. Sometimes, the bar was even too high,
Wow.
So I am, who I am. I really, from my background, come from a school of I need to be the change that I want to see, because that's basically the value system within which I grew up. Whenever I was in any environment, my grandparents would ask, what did you do to influence it? Did you put up your hand? I was always encouraged to stand up.
And speak up.
So I actually that was instilled in me from a long, long time ago. And I've always been able to see things differently. But sometimes I go into situations, and because of that, value system, sometimes I look out for differences, purely because that's how I've been conditioned to say, what is it that you can influence differently when you get to a situation? It's not about just blending in. It's about, what if, so I really believe in being the change that I want to see in any situation.
I find that the notion of excellence is brilliant and it's necessary for everyone. But I find that sometimes it can also invite the aspect of feeling like you're not good enough for everything that you come across. So if you can't do it excellently, then you just weren't good enough, which is that imposter syndrome that happens to a lot of people. So how do you balance, being excellent and, also just healthily looking at something and not seeing it as not being good enough? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that is tricky, right? Because when you are, a perfectionist, which sometimes I think I am, you also have the risk of really trying to strive for the impossible.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I've grown as a leader, as I've grown as a person, and even having children, I've started to develop an appreciation for mistakes and looking at mistakes or even looking at failure as an opportunity to grow. I think in the past, whenever I had a failure, it would like literally stress me to my core. But now, I think it also comes with, you know, maturity. I look at it as a learning curve and say, what can I take out from this experience? Because obviously it happened for a reason, you know. And that's really something that I've been really focused on, because also when you're leading people, it's very important that you don't necessarily put unrealistic expectations on them. So I've learned to say, you know, if somebody hasn't done something maybe to my expectation, okay, how can I help them to aim for higher without necessarily making it seem like it's completely inaccessible? Yeah.
You know, you spoke about failure. And someone with your responsibilities, I suppose one can't afford to fail. But have you at all in your career, you know, come very close to that, where you felt like, you know what, I have failed dismally in this particular execution? And can you share what that execution was, and what you learned from that experience? And can you call it failure?
Yeah, no, so I mean, in my career, my job is to really understand customers and find solutions to them, that, or rather to their problems that can help them improve their lives. So it's a very privileged position, because I get to design products, services, I get to talk to customers. And at one point in time, I worked on a product with my team, which we were very excited about. It had never been done before in the country. It was really going to be the first one in the market. And we did our research, we made sure that we do our homework, we did a good business case, and then we launched the project into the market. After a few months, I mean, it took off.
Okay.
It did so well. I think within 4 months, we had 6 million people using it.
Ooh.
And it was a very big success. But meantime, when we actually started to analyze, we find that actually it's losing us a lot of revenue, because people are basically optimizing, which means that they were basically, it was priced too cheaply. And the fact that people had taken it up was actually hurting our business. So we needed to change it, increase pricing. It created a lot of noise. You know, people were unhappy. There was a lot of complaints on social media. And, you know, that for me was a low point, because I just had never experienced something like that. Most of the products I'd launched had been successful. So I looked at that as a big disappointment. But at the same time, it was a learning, because, to be honest, I mean, in my career, I've been, you know, I've been working for, right now, it's almost 22 years. So to have something like that as a learning, which had not happened for a long time, I felt like it was necessary, because it actually exposed me to how, as a leader who was actually working through people, I could actually make mistakes, and how those mistakes can actually help us to learn maybe how to manage things in future. So I'm actually looking at it as a learning experience, and I reflect on it, I reference it, I try not to dwell on it, but I do think that it definitely helped me in terms of how I'm making decisions now.
Yes.
So certainly a learning rather than a failure.
100%. So it was there to serve you?
It definitely, absolutely.
Okay. And now, have you ever dropped an opportunity out of fear, to say, you know what, this I absolutely cannot do? Like, you've dropped the opportunity even though you know that it has the ability to catapult you to the next position. Has that ever happened to you?
It has, and it's something that's happened, I would say, in the recent years.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at my stage in my career now where I've been an executive for like 7 years.
Yes.
And when you've been in my role for like this long, you start to get, you know, different type of positions, because I've reached the peak of my career in terms of marketing. So the kind of roles that I'm getting exposed to now, interesting enough, is CEO roles.
CEO roles?
Yes. I've had, in the last 2 years, I had 2 opportunities where, out of the blue, not actually something I was looking out for, I was approached by companies, and I'm not talking small companies, I'm talking about big companies who've approached me to basically take up a CEO role. And without mentioning who they are. But you know, my first instinct when I've had those roles was I actually would completely reject them. Not because I didn't think that I was interested in the company or because I didn't think I had basically the experience, but for some reason I've never felt ready to take on such a role. Wow. You know, and either it's because of timing wise or I need to get it right in my head that actually that's where I'm operating now. But up to now, it's not a role that I've been actually able to open myself up to, even though I'm getting presented with those opportunities. So, you know, one went quite advanced, but then at the end, I actually pulled out because I thought,
pulled out.
Yes, because I felt, you know what, I'm not sure I can do this.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other one, I think when they presented to me, I actually said, you know what, I don't think I'm up for this. And after some conversations, I met with in fact, I was recommended by the incumbent CEO to come as his successor. Yes. And then after meeting with him, I said, I don't think I can fill your shoes. And, you know, so I pulled out. But it's something that is current and I'm experiencing now. So I think maybe it's a matter of time, but I'm just at that point where I'm not yet, you know, able to see myself moving into such a role.
What do you think it will take for you to see yourself in that position? What else do you need to do to build up in you to start seeing yourself there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important question because I think when I look at a CEO role, you know, and one of the learnings, leadership learnings I've had in my career is that the higher up you go, the more you lead through people. Whereas, you know, my background, I'm technically very strong and I know what I'm doing. And I'm sitting at that point where when you become a CEO, you're going to have to basically relinquish sort of accountability for what you are actually doing. Yes. You now need to actually influence through people. So I'm sitting at that point where I'm not ready to do that. And also, I feel like I have a few leadership journeys that I have to complete to be able to influence at a CEO level. Because one of the things I believe is that when you're a CEO, you know, you work with very senior people. So for you to, you know, really make an impact, you have to have very, very developed and mature leadership. And I think that there's a few things that I need to work on before I can get to that stage.
That's very honest. That's very, very honest, Mapula. I think many people would jump at the opportunity, especially when it gets presented to them. You know, people, I think people of, as people of faith, will be like, look at God. Who am I to deny myself?
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
And so that, for you to look at that and introspect and to say, you know what, there are still some valuable things I need to learn and master and be willing to let go of before I can assume such, especially because it's people-centric. When you are managing people, you need to take very good, I suppose one needs to be very responsible with that decision and not just jump at it and figure it out as they go along, you know?
Absolutely.
So that, I find that very valuable, and I think more people are going to respect you as a result, understanding who you are, where you are right now in your life, in your career, you know, and then be able to make those bold decisions that are in the best interest of the people that you are likely to be managing and developing as well in the future.
No, absolutely. Sure. I really believe it.
Hey, if it was me, hey!
Look at God.
Look at God. All that tithing is finally paid off. Yeah. All right. One last or second last question. We're about to wrap. What's your self-talk, Mapula, in times of crisis? You spoke about an incident where you felt that there was a bit of failure in that execution. In that failure of an experience, what was your self-talk that rose you out of that? Because I think people get stuck in that rut and they aren't able to move on. They get paralyzed by, you know, the mistakes that they've made and don't gain the confidence to keep making other mistakes boldly and comfortably. What was your self-talk that gave you the courage to, number one, get out of that, but also to continue, you know, making bigger, even bigger decisions that come at risk?
Yeah, I mean, I use affirmations whenever I, you know, need to center myself in some assurance of why I'm able to do what I'm able to do. And I tend to talk about my accomplishments. You know, I'm my biggest motivator. I'm basically very experienced, and I talk about how I've been able to impact the companies that I've been able to work for. And normally when I look at the facts and I separate the feelings, I'm able to, you know, like realize that, you know what, the feelings might be temporary, but my impact is quite indelible. So that's how I really, you know, and sometimes I have to look back and reflect. And when I reflect, you know, undoubtedly, that's when I know that, you know, the feelings are very temporary at that point in time. And I just need to refocus myself.
Mapula, thank you so much. Thank you for braving it. Thank you for choosing to share, you know, these emotions that we don't often speak about, but that are so powerful and so necessary in our lives. And I think the idea of this show is to help normalize the feelings that even you encounter. It's very difficult to imagine that people with your responsibilities, your achievements, could also go through the things that we all go through. And so thank you for humanizing yourself and for normalizing it and for being so honest about it as well. And so thank you so much for tuning in to Braving It. We will have many more people, the likes of Mapula, really here to inspire you, to empower you, and to draw you even closer to your own enormity. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned. Do comment and let us know what you think of this particular episode.